Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first installment of the AKA podcast. Uh, my plans for this podcast or this project is for it to be a more of a sports related podcast, focusing solely, for the most part, on FC Barcelona. But I won't limit it to that. My plans would be to kind of go into discuss just issues that I care about, but I'll mainly focus on FC Barcelona, discussing its matches, players, news, and tactics, which I really enjoy that part of the game, the tactics part of it. And I look forward to discussing a lot of that on this platform. Uh, yeah, I think I discussed everything in terms of introductions for this. So let's jump into the first episode of the AKA podcast. Um, Today marks the 10th of January of 2018. Uh, Currently, FC Barcelona are about a foot into the quarterfinals of the Copa del Rey after drawing 1-1 to Celta Vigo. We're also halfway through the La Liga season, and I don't want to say that we've practically won it, because I do think we're still. It's obviously half the season, but still a lot of work still needs to be done, and the teams are one or two losses away from it being real competitive. So I wouldn't say that it's practically won, but we're getting there. In terms of La Liga, and we're also in the round of 16 versus Chelsea in the Champions League, which again I won't say is an automatic win, but we're definitely the favorites coming into that. So life so far is pretty decent, as pretty well actually, not decent. It's actually pretty great as a Barca fan. Not to mention the new signings and possible signings, but like the Coutinho signing and possibility of Yerry Mina coming into the club. Also, some departures of some players that may not have contributed as much as we hoped when we signed them during the previous transfer windows. But with all the good stuff that's happened currently, or that's currently happening, it's easy to forget that just 6 months ago we were rock bottom. Like we were almost beyond rock bottom, in fact. But so everything that's happening right now, yeah, us Barca fans really kind of deserve this, because we've been through a lot through these last 6 months, and I kind of wanted to dedicate this episode to kind of like the journey of how we got to where we are today. Because ever since towards the ending of that last season, it's been pretty dark for the team, but we've turned it around. So I wanted to discuss the moments that turned it around, and key events during those last 6 months. So I guess we could start with the July 1st, like as soon as the summer transfer windows opened. We started chasing a couple of players that I guess were needed, but I felt like we chased them like almost to a point where we were wasting time, and a lot of that has to go to the board, which they had an awful transfer window. If you start with Verratti, which there were reports after the transfer window that we never actually went after him. Like it was all fake news, if you will. We went for Verratti. We also went for Siri from Nice. And we also focused a lot on Coutinho. We wasted a lot of energy on on Coutinho for the summer, and it's not. I'm not saying wasted as in he was a bad player or anything. I think he's a great player, in fact. But it was almost very straightforward from Liverpool how they rejected every offer that we gave him, which some of them were a lot, to be honest. And at some point during the summer, I was thinking that he wouldn't be worth more than 120 million, like max, because that was kind of before everything during the transfer windows kind of went like super inflated. But yeah, that was the that's how it started, and we were looking to strengthen our squad because the ending of the season before it with Luis Enrique was a real disappointment, to be honest, because during his era, if you will, like we really lacked control in the team. Like the midfield was very overlooked by him or the board, whoever it was. But our midfield was very weak. I mean, especially when you compare it to the midfield of Real Madrid or a PSG, which they should have beaten us in that round of 16 last year. But I think they were unlucky, and we had a really good home leg for us. But we really needed signings, like a controller, if you will, like Verratti or a Siri. But after that, we had that positive energy coming into trying to strengthen the squad. Out of nowhere, reports came out of Neymar wanting to leave, and at first when I read it, when I saw the reports on Twitter, I think a lot of Barca fans that was their reaction was like, well, you always hear the rumors. There were also rumors of Ronaldo going to Manchester United. It was kind of a similar response to, oh, it's never gonna happen. It's bizarre. Like this came out of nowhere, and it ended up happening. Like the rumors just kept on growing and growing, and it ended up happening. I won't lie, I was a bit distraught when it happened because you were coming into the window thinking you'd strengthen the squad, but you end up losing one of your best players. And I still rate Neymar. Neymar is like probably top 3, top 2 best players in the world right now, after obviously Lionel Messi. But he was a real influence in that team, and losing him was a bit difficult. And that kind of started a trend of just bad, I guess you could say, I don't want to say results, but just bad decisions or just bad events happening to us, just awful. Like, we were for a bit, our team was a bit of a laughing stock for all of Europe, which it doesn't feel good when you're a fan of a club, especially of a club of this caliber, knowing what you achieved just a couple years ago, and now going to this point where you start signing players like Deulofeu. I know he was brought back from Everton, but he really isn't Barcelona quality. And spending, I think it was 12 million on him, questionable decision by the board. But the decision that was more questionable, at least at the time, was the signing of Paulinho, and that really kind of hit a nerve for a lot of Barcelona fans, including myself, because you don't just go and buy a player from China out of nowhere, especially you wouldn't spend 40 million on them. And it seemed like a decision that there were a lot of conspiracy theories that Bartomeu might have some sort of business dealings in China and whatnot, which, I mean, coming back to it, that might still be the case, but I don't think so. It turns out Paulinho was one of our better signings this summer. But what also kind of hindered that whole summer window was just awful. Like those 3 months from like July through like September were just they just weren't good. It wasn't a good time to be a Barca fan, because that also included the Super Cup losses to Real Madrid, and they weren't just losses; they were humiliations almost. I mean, it wasn't like the humiliations that we gave them, like the 5-0s and the 4-0s that we gave them, but losing 2 games back to back. And for the second game, I remember that we had, I think it was for the second game where we had less possession of the ball than they did for the first time in a long time. And it just felt like there was a change in I guess in the power struggle in that, because I mean it was pretty even, but Barcelona versus Real Madrid, like Barcelona had you could always count on them, but during those Super Cup losses, it was like you could see it coming. We were that bad. Uh, I mean, and that added to like the frustration of that summer. And I guess what you could also add were especially before the first game of that La Liga season, was the Barcelona terrorist attacks, which again kind of just lower. I mean, I won't compare the attacks to like all the other events because obviously they don't compare. But looking back at it, it was like it really brought down the mood in the city and on the team, and it just didn't have a good atmosphere. But with that, there were some positives during the during that window. Uh, I guess the obvious ones were the Dembele signings and the Semedo signings, and I thought Semedo would just be a starter on the team, which ended up not happening. But Sergio Roberto really did step up for the team, and I think Valverde keeping him as a starter might be the correct decision. I mean, unless Semedo changes something or Roberto changes something. Obviously, the ideal scenario would be to have Sergio Roberto as a midfielder and Semedo as a right back, because they're both amazing at the right back position. But in terms of attacking, I'd say Sergio Roberto is a better player, but at the same time, his talents really do belong in the midfield. And yeah, so and then after that, uh, again, that just really like I guess you could say the Great Depression of 2017, which uh kind of ended with a lot of protests happening against the board, and we also had, it feels like a long time, but it really hasn't been that long since Benedetto's motion to bring down, if you will, the Barcelona board, which ended up failing, but I feel like it kind of lit up a fire under everybody to kind of you know get get their stuff together. But after that, there were I guess if you could add the Catalonia protests also, which, man, if you really think about it, that summer was absolutely insane. Like that summer in the beginning of the fall of 27 of the 2017-2018 of the 2017-2018 season really was insane for Barcelona and its supporters. But we eventually did turn it around. I felt, and there were I felt some games that kind of defined the first half of this season, and I have a list of them right here in front of me. And yeah, I wanted to start with that 2-0 win versus Real Betis, and that was right after those the Barcelona attacks. And you had all the players coming in with like the Barcelona on the back of the jersey and whatnot. Being the first game in La Liga after the Super Cup losses, after the embarrassment that was and currently that currently at the time currently was an embarrassing transfer window. You really needed something to lift you up, and that win versus Real Betis really, I think, really started something special. Because I remember in that game, the Valverde's tactics were very like high press. Like I remember seeing Alcacer, Sergio Roberto, a lot of other players. I forgot. We had a lot of injuries. I don't think Suarez started. I don't think Iniesta was playing. But we had a really good team effort that day, and it wasn't an easy win by any means. But that win kind of was a catalyst to the first half of that season. I think. And then I guess you could say the second game that really kind of had the effect on our season was the 5-0 win versus Espanyol, which marked the debut of Ousmane Dembele, and he obviously had the assist to Luis Suarez for that fifth goal. Also, Messi had a hat trick that game, and I think it was an almost it was a loud day at the Camp Nou, and it kind of again it brought some sort of belief into the team, which was positive. And then off of that was the 3-0 home win versus Juventus in the Champions League. And coming into that game, you really wanted to see how the squad would handle it, because you had like a I guess you want to say like a new right side of the team, because you had Ousmane Dembele on the wing and Semedo at right back, and I think their link up play was wonderful. I mean, it's a shame that we didn't get to see a lot of it because of his injury, but like their link up play on that right side was immense. It really was, and a 3-0 home win against a top team was it brought back the faith, not only for Barca fans but also the just neutral. The neutrals in general, that were like, oh, Barcelona are, they're not to be reckoned with. Is that a phrase? No, I don't think so. After that, and then directly after that game was a 2-1 win versus Getafe at Getafe, and I guess I don't think we ever conceded a goal before that game, and seeing the team's response, not only to being a goal down after a great goal, if anyone remembers that goal that came in, it was an absolute screamer. But, we conceded the first goal of, I guess, the season, not counting the Super Cup, but we also lost Dembele. And seeing the response of the team was, it was, it again restored the belief. Not only are they going to be good when, everything else is going well, but they would try to work in a result when they were down, and the goals came in from Denis Suarez to tie it up, and it also Paulinho, he scored his first goal for Barcelona, and it kind of, I guess, brought back the people, like they started supporting Paulinho again, which before they really weren't supportive because of the circumstances surrounding him and being from China, and the conspiracy theories of Bartomeu and whatnot. And so off of that game, it wasn't off of it. It was a couple weeks later. We had another win versus Las Palmas in an empty Camp Nou stadium. Of course. Coming off of the Catalonia protests, which I remember that match was really close to being cancelled, and I really wanted it to be cancelled because you want the safety of the people, the safety of the players, the safety of the city in general. You shouldn't play a match that just postpone it, just like a team that goes to the Club World Cup or something. You could always postpone a match. It's not a big problem, but the team really did step up on that day and had a really positive result. It wasn't an easy result. I didn't mention that with the Getafe game, but at halftime, Valverde really showed his tacticianness, if you will, like his ability to make changes at halftime. He showed that during the Getafe game, and he showed that during the Las Palmas game. I think he brought on, I think it was Rakitic and Iniesta at halftime, and it really changed the match. I know a lot of fans on Twitter were, even still to this day, kind of slandering Rakitic, and I was one of them. At first, he didn't have a good season last season or the season before that. I feel like the only really great season that he offered was his debut season for Barcelona. But by looking at it now, his role kind of changed into the double pivot with Sergio Busquets, and honestly, defensively, you couldn't ask much more of a player. But going forward, you should ask more questions of him. But during that Las Palmas match, him and Iniesta really changed the game. I mean, they weren't on the score sheet, but they were the catalyst for the win. And another game that really changed kind of our season was the 1-1 draw versus Atleti, which again we went down during that match, and I'd say this match was probably Valverde's worst. Again, not counting the Super Cups, because it was almost, you could think of it as preseason, but think of it what you will. I'm not counting it. But that 1-1 draw versus Atleti, where he started Gomez kind of on the right wing, which is a position that he should never touch. Like, I know Luis Enrique had him at right back last season for a couple matches, which kind of boggled my mind at the time, because I mean, he's been given opportunity after opportunity in the midfield, and he's never taken them. Yet he was starting instead of a Denis Suarez or an Alish Vidal or a Deulofeu. He started on that right wing, and again at halftime, Valverde did make changes, and he played him in more of his like natural position at the left central midfielder, kind of where Iniesta plays. And he had a really good second half, I thought, Andre Gomez. But again, we scored off of was it a Sergio Roberto cross to a Luis Suarez header, which was a brilliant goal. And that was coming off of Luis Suarez having a dry spell in terms of goals and whatnot. So yeah, it was a 1-1. It was a 1-1 draw, but it was a good result looking back at it. How many other matches do I have on this? Probably 3 more matches. The other one would be the 2-0 win versus Athletic Bilbao, which that one I felt like we should have at most gotten 1 point off of. But Andre Ter Stegen, Marc-Andre Ter Stegen, he had probably one of his best matches, not counting last year's Clasico. That Clasico, the 3-2 Clasico was an amazing performance by him. But for this season, I'd say that 2-0 win versus Athletic Bilbao was probably his best moment. We also had a really good Lionel Messi goal, linking up with Jordi Alba on that, and it was a good win, I thought. Like, defensively, we held it together, and we pulled out a really tough result. And Athletic Bilbao aren't a team that bends over. Those give trouble to Barcelona and to Real, to Atleti, and they're a difficult team. But other games that also turned around our season, I'd say the 2 draws versus Valencia and Celta. I don't know if I want to count those. I have them on the list, but I don't know if I want to count those, because for those matches we should have won. Whether it was a shortcoming from our end or the officials' end, it kind of doesn't matter, because you only got 1 point out of each game. But we had a really good performance in those for the most part, but we just couldn't pull out victories. But you can't win them all. But also, like, the big one that really defined our season was that 3-0 win versus Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. That game was an absolute masterclass by Valverde, I thought. Definitely the second half. I'm not sure about that first half, because the midfield seemed kind of overcrowded. When I was watching that game during the first half, it genuinely felt like Real Madrid had more players than we did, because of the way they pressed on the ball, and they honestly should have gotten a goal during the first half had they actually taken their chances. But I'd say they were unlucky to not score. But the problem was for them, it was a mistake on, I'd say, Zidane's part or the players' part. I'm not quite sure, because you can't. The thing with high pressing, you can't contain it for long. Like if humans had the physical ability to run for 90 minutes or 2 hours straight, then high press would be like the ideal tactic for all teams. But you can't maintain it, and after pressing really high for 45 minutes, they just couldn't do it as effectively during the second half, and we really took advantage of that. And that first goal was a really good team goal, especially by Busquets and Rakitic, and Messi to an extent, because he pulled Kovacic out of the way to have Rakitic run, and a lot of people were blaming Kovacic for that, and I honestly don't think it was his fault, because not only 99 times out of 100, Rakitic passes the ball to Messi in a situation like this. So Kovacic going to Lionel Messi after Lionel Messi dragging him, really you couldn't place that on Kovacic. But Rakitic actually made the right decision at that point, and continued his run, and scored the goal, which after that the rest of the dominoes just kind of fell into place, and we dominated that second half, and we deserved the win in the end. Which which brings us to today. After all these matches, we're sitting high on top of the table, 16 points above Real Madrid. I think it's 9 points above Atletico Madrid, and 11 points above Valencia. 18 games played. One more and we'd be exactly halfway through the season. You couldn't ask for more. You genuinely couldn't ask for more from Valverde, especially knowing where we started the season. It's he was the perfect man for the job. When we first signed him, I did rate him, because he always played Athletic Bilbao in a way where they wouldn't concede much, but at the same time they wouldn't park the bus, but they'd be competitive against bigger teams with bigger qualities. So I think Valverde did a sublime job with the squad that he had, and I hope it continues, but continues for the rest of the season, and hopefully we see the fruits that bear from that first half of the season carry over to the second half. Towards the end here, I'm almost done for today's episode. But in terms of the individuals responsible for this turnaround, again, it's only been 6 months since all the media were saying Barcelona are finished. They're steps away from, not only like ruin in terms of on the field, but like financial ruin, because you could only pay the players so much, and because if Barcelona don't make a Champions League or something, they lose a ton of money. But that being said, we look where we are now. So who are the individuals responsible for this turnaround? I have them ranked here, but let me know your thoughts in the comments, because I had some trouble like ranking them, but here it is. This is what I have. At number 5, I have Paulinho and Jordi Alba, kind of taking that fifth spot at the same time. I think Paulinho really exceeded expectations. Coming in, being slandered by not only the media in general, but a lot of the fans as well, and coming in and bringing amazing. I don't want to say amazing performances, because a lot of his goals, I guess you could say, quotes, tap-ins, but he had to be at the right place at the right time, and he does cause a lot of disturbances for the other team. You could think of him as a destroyer in the midfield, but he's done his job, and I think a lot of that goes, a lot of credit from his kind of has to go to Valverde. But also Jordi Alba, he really stepped up after being benched towards the end of the last season. He this is probably the best Jordi Alba that Barcelona has seen. Period. Like his link up with Messi, his assists, his runs on that left hand side are absolutely immense, and it's amazing that that he could keep up for 90 minutes running up and down the field without a Neymar to hinder him, and like he runs free and he enjoys it and he's clearly good at it. So those are my number five. Number four, I have Samuel Umtiti. I mean, what could you say about this guy? I mean, at this point, I think it's fair to say that he's probably the best center back in La Liga, if not like one of the top three center backs in the world at this point. Because I mean, he's exceeded PK. I'd say he's like the rock at the back. Because PK has been quite shaky, but Umtiti has been bringing performance after performance, and he's dropping a 10 out of 10, if you will. And he's really been like a solid defender at the back. At number three, I have Sergio Busquets. I mean, obviously, again, what could you say? What else could you say about Busquets? He goes above and beyond in terms of being on the ball. Like his disguise pass is so underrated by many people, and it really does open like passing lanes for his teammates to get open those disguise passes, and also his resistance to the counter press. Like he's the ideal midfielder for to counter a counter press, I guess, if you will. As you could see by that first goal versus Real Madrid. That's just one of the examples. He does this every game, pretty much. At number two, I have Lionel Messi. I mean, what? Again, what could you say about the guy that hasn't been said? He really stepped up. He carried the team on his back. I'd say, like on the field, he really did. I don't think I need to delve into what he's done this season. I mean, he's obviously top scorer. I think he's the second in assists in La Liga, but he's carried the team. And at number one, I'm gonna have to put Valverde, because he's been getting his tactics spot on, and in the occasions, like towards the, I guess, first half of the season, when he hasn't gotten his tactics right, he'd make the correct changes at halftime to make sure to get at least a point out of a match. I mean, his substitutions have been good. His formations, given the squad, obviously with the Dembele injury, I mean, what you couldn't ask for more from that. Again, especially where we came from. Like this is above and beyond at least what I was expecting out of him. And like I said, what we have now is we just signed Coutinho. We're also, I mean, reports are coming that we're very close to signing Yerry Mina from the Brazilian league, which, I mean, I don't want to say too much because I honestly don't know how good he is. But points on him. I mean, he seems like a lively person. His celebrations seem a bit wild, but I really do want to look out for a celebration with Paulinho and Umtiti and himself if we do end up signing him. I think it'd be something to be seen for them to be celebrating together for some reason. But yeah, points on him. I do feel he's a bit slow, which kind of worries me because a lot of the goals that Barcelona concede, I mean, we haven't conceded too much under Valverde, so it's it's kind of uncharted territory in terms of that. But a lot of the goals that we generally concede are on counterattacks, and you gotta have like the pacey defenders for that. Someone like an Umtiti or who else? I mean, Jeremy Matthew. I don't want to say him because I don't know. He didn't have the best technique, I'd say, but he was very fast for the most part. So that's probably the only con I have of him. But Yerry Mina is so good on the ball. Like he's a really good ball playing center back, at least from the few videos that I've seen, and he also pitches in the goals here and there. So the rest of the season has an optimistic look, which is amazing considering where we were like towards the end of August, beginning of September. That it seemed all doom and gloom then, but now we're in for a trouble. Hopefully we beat Celta Vigo in the second leg of the Copa del Rey. So in terms of what to expect for the second half of the season, hopefully we win all the trophies that we could. But I think I'll leave that for another installment in terms of what Valverde could do with the players that he has now. I mean, obviously he has Coutinho and Dembele, as well as possibilities of getting rid of some players that may not be up to the Barcelona standard. Like, I won't mention any names, but we'll discuss it then. And I think that will be all for this installment of the AKA podcast. If you've stuck around this far, thank you for watching. Consider liking the podcast. I'm not sure if I want to do this on iTunes. I think I'm gonna keep it strictly on YouTube for now, because I really want to see I want to read the comments. So yeah, consider subscribing and leave your thoughts in the comments. Also follow AKA podcast on Twitter for more interactions with yours truly. And yeah, I think that's gonna be all for this episode. Again, thank you for sticking around, and have a good day.